Excellent. So I'll push stop when I finish talking, so it's just me. So good morning again. Precepts Sunday. Why do we do the precepts? It's always worth reflecting on this. So the practice of Buddhism, Buddha said, I teach two things. I teach suffering and I teach the end of suffering. So the precepts are a part of the path, and an important part of the path towards the end of suffering. That's our own suffering and the suffering of others. A way this works is to bring awareness to our practice, bring awareness to what we're doing. So we can say, people will say, we observe the precepts in their violation. We observe the precepts when we break them. I'm sure that's true, but it seems a pretty low bar to me. Oops, I just killed somebody. Maybe I should have done that. But we, by renewing the precepts, by reminding ourselves of the precepts on a regular basis, it becomes a code to live by. And it's not just a set of rules, it's a set of guidelines that we internalize, and they are reference points for our behavior. So they're a recognition in anticipation of our practice. And they're also a recognition of the impact of the practice on me and on others. The Satipatthana Sutta, which is the 4 foundations of mindfulness, in there, and this is not only in that place, but I think it shows up, I think it's 13 times in that sutra, the line, mindful internally, mindful externally, mindful both internally and externally. So that's applying our awareness to this sack of skin and bones, everything else, and then the holistic, the two things together, recognizing they're just not separate. This is all the same thing. So we live the precepts from that standpoint. And the precepts also, you'll find if you spend a lot of time, too much time maybe, studying Buddhism and thinking about it, all the different words, all the different Sanskrit and Pali words that come down to us and all the different teachings, they're all different lenses to point at the same thing. So karma is central to this as well. The precepts point us directly at karma. The 5 remembrances, I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape growing old. I'm of the nature to get ill or sick. I cannot escape that. I am of the nature to die. I cannot escape that. Everything and everyone I love will be taken away from me. I can't escape that. My karma is my only true possession. I am the heir to my karma. Whatever that karma is, good or bad, I am its heir. Karma is often translated as action. That's useful, but it's often not translated, which is the most useful way of looking at it, I think. Often translated as action, that's useful but limited. It's often translated as intention, which probably gets closer. A way of looking at this is perhaps when I think about thought, when I think about thought, it's like cutting water with a knife. It just covers up immediately. But there is something there. There is something there. It's not that there's nothing there. It's just the impact externally is not as great as when I cut sand with a knife, which is like talking. So the cutting water is like thinking, cutting sand is like talking. Cut sand with a knife, the wind comes and it covers it up. It lasts for a little while, but then it covers up. Cutting stone with a knife stays, it depends on the stone, of course. Sandstone, it's pretty quick, but it stays for much longer if it's a stone. So karma is all of those, and it's not separating what is inside and outside. Karma exists independent of self and other. Karma just is, and actions have karmic consequences. What we do, what we say, what we think impacts ourselves, impacts others. An obvious way it impacts me, if I've just done something which I know is wrong, I know I should was wrong, it's something I know I shouldn't have done. And the precepts are guides to help us figure that out, right? So they're ways to point out. But if I've done something that I know is not the right thing to do, it will stay here. And it might stay here just as a specific thought, or it might be because I do so much of that stuff and my mind is just cloudy and busy. But it's just so noisy, it's really hard to settle down. It's really hard. So our ability to meditate and engage in the practice we just engaged in this room and in your home or other Zoom spaces is compromised, dramatically compromised. And so that's the obvious practice. But it more broadly means as we take that into our lives, it's much harder if we're going around violating the precepts, behaving in these kinds of ways, to be settled enough to behave in a way that you would really want to behave, or that we would really want to behave. So the precepts really help us settle down. So how do we do this in our lives? Well, one thing which I say quite a lot, take a breath. Before you think, before you speak, before you act, just pause, just take a breath. It is remarkable how that one breath can change everything. There's an acronym I picked up recently, which is WAIT. Why am I talking? And if you pause that one breath before you say something, you might just decide not to say it. Why am I talking? That's great. So pause. And then, look around and think. And remember that whatever you do, karma. Whatever you do, it's like watering seeds, it's like planting seeds. It will grow, it will become more. And it can either be nourishing or it can be unhealthy. That's a choice. Take a breath and think about it. So I want to talk about environments in which we do that. We do that in our whole lives. We do that at home. This space here is a place we can practice that. So I want to talk about that in this space just for a minute. This physical space, and this applies equally when you're practicing on Zoom, because when you join on Zoom, you are joining this physical space. You're on that TV screen right there, and we can see everything you do. If you pick your nose, if you decide to start throwing darts around, we can see it. And it impacts here, and everybody else on Zoom can see that too. So it applies to everybody who's in this conversation here. So we enter the space. We recognize we're entering a sacred space. Now, that's not to say this is sacred and nothing else is, but we enter this space and we can recognize intentionally this is sacred space. Our bathroom, our kitchen, they're also sacred. But we can collect our mind when we enter this particular space on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday or a Thursday, whenever it is. So we enter slowly, respectfully, quietly. We make sure that we keep the space clean and tidy. Put things away. Dogen, who was the founder of Soto Zen in Japan, 13th century Japanese guy, he wrote a whole bunch of rules about how to enter and move around and do whatever in Soto Zen spaces. Now, we're not going to write lots and lots of rules. We don't have lots and lots of rules. But the reason he had that was, yes, it's a very strict, rigorous practice, but by letting go of your own thoughts about what you're supposed to do, by just allowing yourself to trust the crowd, trust the space, that actually helps our thinking peel away. Keep a clean space, keep your mind tidy. Practice is much easier. Keep your space tidy, it's much easier to keep your mind tidy. Stop thinking about what you're supposed to be doing helps keep your mind tidy. So trusting the space, trusting etiquette within the space is also important. So, Dogen would say, well, you bow before you walk and you put your left foot in first, and you always, do step in quietly and respectfully. And when you're settled in quietly, of course, when you're sitting, you're going to get pins and needles, you're going to find you need to move. Of course, so move, right? But as you're doing it, remember, there are other people around, and what you do impacts other people. So just if you move quietly and respectfully, and pause for a minute before you move. Because it's rare that it's so urgent, you just have to do it suddenly. Just pause and breathe. And that also helps your practice. It helps internal practice, but it helps awareness of this connection. It is very rare that you actually need to go up and do something in the lobby or do something in the kitchen. So it's very rare that once you're settled, you actually need to leave your cushion, other than during the recognized breaks, right? But and similarly, what you bring into the room impacts other people. So if you bring in your water bottle and sitting there sipping all the time, or you've got like piles of clothes and a coat behind you and like 15 spare cushions over here, it's just clutter for everybody else. So be aware as you enter and as you occupy this space, how that impacts other people. I noticed that that curtain is delightfully tidy. Not always the case. Just remember, there's little bits of paper around because this is all still fairly new to us, so these are to help us remember things. But remember, as you go around, it's like the Boy Scout rule: leave things as you found them. Leave things as you
no trace.
Leave no trace. Thank you. Leave no trace. So just these are just principles to bring to bear, and by being mindful of these principles, by trying to keep space tidy, by being intentionally respectful that other people, you're receiving in this space the support of other people, but they're also relying on your settled practice as their support. So by remembering this exchange and remembering your role in it, this helps us all. I say you, us, remembering our role in that. It helps us all have a really harmonious space, helps us all have a very settled practice here. And with that, that's a foundation. And if we do that, it's kind of organizing our minds and organizing our behavior so that hopefully we're better equipped to take this home with us. And maybe we live in a really boisterous home with 15 young kids bouncing all over the place, but there is probably a space. In fact, I've spoken to many people about this kind of thing over the years, and I've not spoken with anybody for whom this is not true. So, in other words, to eliminate double negativity. Everybody I have spoken with has found this to be true. There is almost certainly a place in each of our homes, however chaotic it is, where we can carve off a little corner, even if it's the 6 feet next to our bed, like 2 foot wide, 6 foot long, from the end of the bed, from the bedside table, just the length of the bed and back. There's a little space which we can claim as this is my space, and I am going to bring my precepts to bear here. And when I go into that space, I know it's clean, I know it's tidy, I know it's structured, I know it's organized, and I can be in that place when I go there. So we can bring this out, and in your car, you can do it in your car, right?